All right, so we're gonna help connect some more dots for you guys and keep laying the groundwork out together. So let's kick things off with you, Ashley. So let's talk about the journey behind the Skin Health line. Where did the journey begin to where we are today, and why these products?
Yeah, it actually started with Joyome, which is probably the number one question I've had outside of a few specific product questions, so we'll address that as well. But we really started with Joyome and said, how can we take sort of the legacy of Plexus skincare and bring it forward and update those formulas? And as we really looked at that, we saw that there was so much we were kind of leaving on the table. There was so much in emerging skin science and trends, types of products, systems, that we really felt like it was time for kind of a new era and to lean into skin health. So I shared in the open, it's been a long journey, but it's been a valuable one. We're so happy with where this landed.
Yes, definitely. Dr. Hart, yeah.
As part of the development of the new skin health system, we did extensive feedback, extensive trials with current Joyome users. We were able to take advantage of what they love most about Joyome and then incorporate that into the system, the simplicity around the routine. We were able to take some of the key ingredients that we really loved about Joyome and bring those into the system as well. And I think, Ashley and I both, we've had extensive feedback from some very loyal Joyome users. If you like Joyome, if you like the Joyome serums, the new Glow Getter serum is really going to just knock your socks off. And when we talk about this evolution, I always say it's, iPhone 9 was great, iPhone 16 is better. This is a better, new and improved system to support skin health.
There we go. We're growing and evolving one, Plexus. Woo! Yes. All right, now speaking of the journey, Ashley, this whole line ladders up to this concept of youthful longevity. So first question is, what does that mean? Secondly, how are we as Plexus shifting the focus from anti-aging concept, if you will, to one that does prioritize health and youthful longevity?
Yeah. Well, and longevity, I mentioned earlier, is becoming such a buzzword, right? And it's this idea, even if you take it out of the skin health realm, that you can actually impact the body's systems to perform optimally for longer. That felt really sciencey, didn't it? Wasn't that? Okay. And so when we think about bringing that into skin and preserving the systems that affect aging, that's really where the youthful longevity concept came together. And even from a marketing standpoint, the history and how we thought about aging related to skin health and skincare has been so interesting, because for so long, and ladies, you know what I'm saying, it was anti-aging. Like we're youthful, fountain of youth. We only want to be young, and it was sort of a, and then it became pro-aging, which really swung the pendulum all the way over here, which was I'm proud and I'm embracing. And I think youthful longevity sits in the middle, which is we can be proud of all of the things that aging brings us, the wisdom, the life experiences. Like I'm proud of the lines on my face, right? Because they show a life well lived.
Yes.
But we can also do what we can do to impact our health at a cellular level, to just feel our best as long as we can.
Love it. Embrace ourselves. Yay! I love that. And I think what excites me the most about this line, that there is a difference between skincare versus skin health. And what excites me the most is the fact that this line goes beyond skincare. Can it give you some gentle exfoliation, help to minimize the appearance? Of course, yes, and those are all great, but it goes beyond that, because we're really nurturing the skin at a deeper level, and it's really focusing on targeting the root causes of visible signs of aging, which then leads me to the next question, Dr. Hartman. I know there are 5 biological factors that accelerate the aging process. So I think we have them on the screen, the 5 biological factors. Can you go through each one and kind of talk to us about why does it happen in the body? What can be contributing to each factor beyond just the aging process?
Yes. So aging is it's a natural progression. It doesn't start at a certain age. From the time we're born, we're always constantly aging, evolving. These 5 biological factors are things that are most prevalent as we get into our 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond. So loss of firmness and elasticity. This is, again, going back to the structure and the function of the skin. So that's why our skin health system includes things like peptides that really help to support that structure, that scaffolding of the skin. Sluggish cellular renewal and turnover is what happens as your cells get older and they die off. Again, they replenish, but as we age, that turnover occurs much slowly, partly due to decrease in ATP. So I talked about providing nutrients that help our body produce its own ATP. So we're providing the fuel that allows that renewal to take place to combat that sluggish or that senescence that happens as we get older. Loss of hydration, that occurs, and that's how we lose the plumpness in our skin. That's when we start to have sagging skin. So we have numerous ingredients, including the hyaluronic acid, the ceramides, that are really going to fill those cells with fluids so that you get that plump, fresh-looking face, that youthful glow that occurs when you have fully hydrated skin cells. Microbiome imbalance, the compromised moisture bearer, again, just a natural consequence of aging when we're exposed to things in the environment. So we're providing prebiotics, postbiotics, other ingredients that can really help support the overall balance of the skin's microbiome, which is so important for locking in that hydration. And then the vulnerability to environmental stressors. You heard Dr. Jeffy talk about it, the exposure to UV rays, the exposure to just environmental toxins, things that are around us in our environment. The older we get, the more we're exposed to that. So it's so important that we protect our investment with a SPF, and then we have the 2-in-1 SPF moisturizer.
Yes, and Dr. Herman, can you talk to us, and I know we're going to get into the skin microbiome, but what's the difference between the skin microbiome and the skin barrier?
They're really interconnected. The skin microbiome, so when we use the term microbiome, we're referring specifically to the microorganisms that inhabit the skin, or when we're talking about the gut microbiome that inhabit the gut. The barrier is just that outer layer that really locks in the hydration. Where they are interconnected is if you have the right amount of beneficial bacteria on your skin, that is helping to produce an increase in the barrier. And by minimizing some of the harmful or unwanted bacteria, those are things that can really start to poke holes in that barrier. So by us improving the skin's microbiome, we're also improving the barrier, which locks in that hydration.
Got it. Okay. Well, remember these 5 factors, you guys, because this is going to be a good conversation piece when you go to generate value with customers behind why Plexus Skin Health. So remember these 5 factors. All right. Now you just heard Dr. Hartman talk about environmental stressors, sun damage being one. We heard Dr. Jeffy talk about the importance of sun protection. So now that we have the Sun Shield product, Ashley, proper coverage, right? How do we apply? What's the tip on applying the Sun Shield product?
Absolutely, and I mentioned earlier this week that the Sun Shield was one of our, I think, most iterative products, especially there at the end. We had the formula really dialed, the benefits, the skin feel, but we were still seeing a little bit of that white cast on the skin, which comes with the zinc oxide. We've been joking about the movie The Sandlot. Does anyone know that movie? Right, like the white nose?
Wendy Peppercorn.
There it is, thank you. I'm glad so many of you got that. We've been laughing about it all week.
Anybody my age.
There it is. It's an accidental mouth-to-mouth scene. Just have a look if you're not familiar. It's a good one. So I'm very fair, and even on me, a white cast was noticeable. And so the real tip here, and this is good for you to know, share, use, is you take the product, put it in your hands. You don't need, we're not putting sunscreen on the whole body, just enough, figure out what that looks like for you. And you're gonna rub it between your hands to warm it up and distribute the product. And then instead of smearing it on the skin, you're gonna pat it. You're gonna pat it in and it will absorb so quickly and you won't have that white cast. So that's a hot tip. You'll still get the coverage and it makes a really beautiful primer for makeup, which you heard Joanna share the other day as well.
I love that. Okay, who loves a product that can serve multiple purposes? Woo! Yes, right? Oh my gosh. And I'm telling you, for those, if you have a primer, if you don't already have a primer in your makeup routine, it is a game changer, I'm telling you guys. It gives that smooth canvas before applying your makeup, and it makes the makeup last longer. So that's another good piece of conversation with customers. All right, let's move into clinical studies. So Dr. Hartman, question for you before we get into the results. Why was it so important for us to invest in these clinicals?
We do our research to identify key ingredients that we want to use in the formulas. The advantage of the clinical is now we're studying the actual finished product. And whenever we're talking about specific claims, that requires specific data. So when you see specific claims like improvements in firmness and elasticity, increases in hydration, and we can put a specific percentage next to that, or we can put a specific day, improvements in firmness in 14 days, that's going to require a specific level of evidence. So that's really a big part of why we invest in clinical trials, to measure not only the system, but also the eye cream.
Yes, and I love that. It's just like continuous commitment to making sure that our products maintain their integrity, their safety, and their effectiveness before they reach anyone's hands. So, love that. All right, so let's get into the skin health system clinical. So I think we should have the research, the data on the screen. Yep, there we go. So Dr. Hartman, what's the background behind this clinical and the highlighted results here?
For the Skin Health System Clinical, all 4 products were used together, the same exact routine that was provided on the screen earlier. This is what the clinical trial participants performed and used over the 8 weeks of the trial. It's important to note all clinical studies are done through validated third-party labs. These are external labs where Plexus provides the products, but we have no say in anything else, no influence on the results. This is truly third-party scientific evidence that is both reliable and repeatable and valid. So with the skin health system, it was important to measure both clinical measurements where they use instruments and tools to actually quantify the improvements in skin health, but then also ask qualitative questions about how do users feel about using these types of products. And that's truly the benefit, and the results speak for themselves. We were able to show benefits in just 2 weeks. Over the course of 8 weeks, 100% of study participants saw visible improvements in skin firmness and elasticity. So that means every single person that was enrolled in that clinical study experienced benefits at the end of it, which is truly outstanding.
That's huge, that's awesome. All right, let's move on to the Bright Eyes clinical. All right, so what's the backstory on this one?
And with Bright Eyes, it's very important. The skin around the eyes is very sensitive. So from a formulation standpoint, we had to be very precise in terms of which ingredients we're using. We had to be very precise to make sure that it's beneficial around the eyes. So for the system trial, all those products are dermatologist tested because the rating, the instrument measurements were done by a dermatologist. With the eye study, we had to use an ophthalmologist in addition to a dermatologist because of just the sensitivity around the eyes. So that's one key difference. And again, just some of the instruments, the measurements that are used, the decrease in dark circles, the decrease in under eye circles and puffiness. These are just very precise, very specific to an eye cream. So it was important to have a separate eye cream trial. And again, the results are also very similar. 98% of participants saw reductions in under eye puffiness in 8 weeks. And it's important to note for both trials, we saw improvements at 2 weeks, we saw greater improvements at 4, greater improvements at 8.
It's getting better.
It gets better. The longer with consistent, regular use, we saw continued improvements for all of the products.
That's incredible. And I know with these results, Ashley, I know you already mentioned this, I have to ask it again. Will we see some future skin health add-ons?
We will. So the idea here is not, we're going to launch it, we're going to put it out in the world, and we're going to move on to the next thing. So we'll continue to iterate, share, create new marketing materials, and yes, new products. So the core system is really designed to suit everybody, right?